My best friend of 15 years slept with my wife. My parents found out 6 months before I did. They said nothing. They came to our house for Sunday dinners. They sat across from her at Christmas. My father shook his hand at my birthday, and they said nothing. I am not telling this story because I want sympathy. I am telling it because I want you to understand exactly what silence costs, and exactly what happens when the person everyone counted on to absorb it decides not to. My name is Rowan. I was 32 when my life split in half. I worked in commercial real estate development, mostly mixed-use projects. Apartments over retail, urban infill, the kind of buildings that turn empty lots into neighborhoods. I was detail-oriented, patient, and very good at reading rooms. Those skills were supposed to help me build things. They ended up helping me dismantle one instead. My wife's name was June. We had been together for 7 years, married for 3. She was a physical therapist at an outpatient clinic in Portland, Oregon. Warm, attentive, the kind of person who remembered which of your friends had a bad knee, and asked about it every time she saw them. I thought that made her caring. I understand now it made her good at making people feel seen without actually seeing them. My best friend's name was Ashford. We met freshman year at Oregon State. He was from a small town in eastern Oregon. One of those places that produces either farmers or people desperate to leave. Ashford left. He became a mortgage broker. Which suited him. He was charming in that slick, frictionless way. That made everything sound easier than it was. He was also my best man. He was godfather to the dog we got the second year of our marriage. He was at our apartment the night June and I got engaged. I helped him through a divorce in 2019, drove him to the courthouse, let him sleep on our couch for 2 weeks after, took him to dinner every Thursday for 3 months, because I knew he was in a bad place. That was the kind of friendship I thought we had. The kind where you show up for each other because that is simply what you do. I found out the way you always find out. Not by being clever. By accident. I was at a conference in Seattle. 2-day event, commercial development summit, the kind of thing that sounds important and mostly involves sitting in chairs. Says, listening to people say obvious things while trying to stay awake. I had planned to stay both nights. But the second session ended early, and the networking dinner was canceled, because the keynote speaker got food poisoning. I drove back to Portland instead of staying. I did not call June. I figured I would just be there when she got home. We had been in a comfortable stretch, the kind of married life that runs quietly in the background, no drama, no distance, just the ordinary texture of two people sharing a routine. I was not suspicious. I was just tired, and wanted to sleep in my own bed. I pulled into our driveway a little after 9. Ashford's car was parked on the street in front of the house. My brain did what brains do. It started building explanations. He dropped by. He was in the neighborhood. He needed to borrow something. He was helping with that thing in the garage. June mentioned something about a broken light fixture. I could not remember if she had mentioned it. But I built the memory anyway. Because that is what brains do when the alternative is too loud to look at directly. I let myself in through the side door off the kitchen. The lights in the living room were off. I heard voices from upstairs. I stood at the bottom of the stairs for a long time. I want to be honest about this part. I did not go up. I sat down on the bottom step and listened to the silence between the sounds, and then I left. Not because I was afraid. Because I already knew. Something in me understood with the absolute clarity that skips past doubt and goes straight to grief. Going up those stairs was not going to give me information. It was going to force a scene. It was going to give them a moment to manage. I did not want to give them a moment. I went back to my car. I sat in the driveway for a while. Then I drove to a hotel downtown and checked in. That night I lay on a hotel bed and looked at the ceiling and did not sleep. By morning I knew what I needed to do. Not what I wanted, what I needed. And I understood clearly that those were not the same thing. I went home the next morning, like I had just arrived from Seattle. June was in the kitchen. She looked up when I walked in, and for a half second, her face did something I recognized later, as relief at seeing it was only me. She said she missed me. She hugged me. I hugged her back. I asked how her evening was. She said she had gone to bed early. She was tired. I said I was tired too. That was the beginning of the most precise performance of my life. For the next 2 weeks, I played the husband I had always been. I brought home dinner. I asked about her patience. I fixed the bathroom faucet that had been dripping for a month. I sat beside her on the couch and watched television and did not let my face change. While she thought I was at work, I built a case. Bank statements first. I had access to our joint account, and her credit cards were tied to our financial software. I was not looking for anything dramatic. I found it anyway. Coffee twice a week at a cafe in the Pearl District. Lunches. Once a hotel reservation in Eugene for a weekend. She told me she was at a continuing education seminar. I had been at a job site in Bend that weekend. I never thought to check. Her phone was harder. She had changed her passcode 6 months ago. She told me she read an article about digital security. At the time I believed her. I understand now that 6 months ago was exactly when this started. I had a different route in. Ashford. Ashford and I still had a shared iCloud photo album from a camping 3 years ago. Neither of us had ever deleted it. Out of habit, he had posted a photo to the wrong album once before. A birthday thing for his nephew he meant to share privately. I checked the album. He had done it again. 3 photos, a restaurant I recognized, June's hand on the table, his hand near hers. The timestamp was a Saturday in October. I had been at an all-day site walk in Gresham. I did not react. I took screenshots. I moved them to a folder on a cloud account she did not know existed. Then I started building a timeline with the same precision I used for project timelines at work. Dates, receipts, photos, deposits, withdrawals. The hotel in Eugene. 2 other instances of a charge at a restaurant we had never gone to together. A cash withdrawal every 3rd Friday. That did not match anything in our normal spending. I added everything to the file. Then I did something I had not planned to do. I called my mother. Not to tell her. To test her. I called on a Tuesday evening and told her I was thinking about surprising June with a weekend trip to the coast, maybe Cannon Beach, and asked if she thought June would prefer that or the mountains. Small talk. A question with no consequence. My mother's voice changed. Just slightly. A half-second pause before she said, "Oh, that sounds wonderful, honey." I had heard that pause before. She used it when she was choosing words carefully, when she was managing something. I let it go that day. I filed it. 2 weeks later, my parents had us over for dinner. My brother was there with his girlfriend. Ashford was not. I noticed my parents did not mention him, which was unusual because he had been a fixture at family dinners for more than a decade. I noticed but did not say anything. Part-way through dinner my father said he had heard my company might be taking on a major project out of state. He had not heard that from me. I had mentioned it once to my mother in passing, weeks ago as a possibility. I looked at him, then at my mother. She was watching her plate. After dinner, while June was in the kitchen helping my mother with dishes, I went outside with my father. We stood on the back deck. He offered me a beer. I took it. "How are things with you and June?" he asked. "Casual. Too casual." "Good," I said. "Why?" He turned the beer bottle in his hands. "I just want to make sure you're both doing okay. Marriage takes work." I looked at him for a long moment. "Is there something specific you want to say to me?" He did not answer fast enough. "Dad." I kept my voice level. "Is there something you know that I don't?" He set his beer down on the railing. "Rowan, sometimes things are complicated. People make mistakes. What matters is that you and June have something worth. How long have you known?" He went quiet. I set my own beer down. "How long?" My mother appeared at the sliding door. She must have heard through the glass. Her face had the careful arrangement of a woman who had rehearsed this and still did not want to do it. "We found out in October," she said quietly. "Your aunt saw them at a restaurant," she told us. October. 6 months ago. We thought it had ended, my father said. Ashford told us it was over. He swore to us. "You spoke to Ashford." "We wanted to give June a chance to come to you herself." I looked at my father, then my mother. Both of them waiting for me to say something that would give them permission to breathe again. "Who else knows?" My mother looked down. "Your aunt, your uncle. We may have said something to Grandma when she was here in December." December. My grandmother had been at our house for Christmas. She sat at the table across from June, and ate the food June cooked and said nothing. My father handed Ashford a beer at my birthday in November and said nothing. I nodded once. "I need some air." My mother took a step toward me. "Rowan, we didn't want to hurt you. We thought, I know what you thought." I went back inside. June was drying a pan. She looked up when I came in and smiled. I smiled back. I said I was getting tired and we should probably head out. She agreed. We drove home. She fell asleep in the passenger seat. I drove and thought about the size of the circle. My parents, my aunt and uncle, my grandmother, Ashford. Everyone who had sat across from me at a table and chosen to say nothing. The next morning I drove to the office of a family law attorney I found, through my company's legal referral service. Not a friend, not a referral from anyone in my family. A stranger with a good rating and no connection to my life. I spread everything out on her desk. The photos, the bank records, the timeline, the hotel receipt. She read through it without speaking. When she finished she looked up. "Oregon is a no-fault state," she said. "Adultery doesn't factor into asset division the way you might expect. What matters is what's in your name and what the marital estate looks like." "The house is in both our names," I said. "We bought it 2 years ago." "When did you get married?" 3 years ago. "Any separate property you brought in before marriage?" "Had savings." I documented them. "And I own a partial interest in a commercial property with 2 partners. Acquired before the marriage. That interest should be separate." She nodded. "We can work with that." I asked her what my options were. "She's told me." I said. "I don't want a confrontation. I don't want to sit in a room and watch them explain themselves. I want this done cleanly and quietly, and I want to be somewhere else. Before they understand what's happening." She looked at me for a moment. "That is absolutely achievable." I walked out of that office with a plan and a clarity I had not felt in weeks. Monday I went to work like normal. Tuesday I opened a new checking account at a credit union in Lake Oswego. Different institution, different branch network, no shared history with our joint accounts. I transferred my direct deposit. I moved the funds I could document as premarital savings into the new account. Wednesday I called my business partners. I did not tell them everything. I told them enough. I said I was going through something personal. And I needed to make sure my stake in our shared property was legally documented and insulated. They were both professionals. They did not ask questions. They helped me. Thursday I had a long call with my supervisor. I told him I was dealing with a family situation and I needed to request a transfer. He asked where. I had already researched this. Phoenix, I said. We have 2 mixed-use projects in the Midtown corridor. Starting next quarter, I know the market, I can be useful there. A pause. That's a big move. I know. When are you thinking? As soon as we can make it work. He told me to let him think about it and call him back. He called me back the next day and said yes. Friday afternoon I texted June. Something came up at work. Late night. Don't wait up. She sent a heart emoji. I sat in a parking structure and stared at it for a second. Then I pulled up my contact list. I found Ashford's number and deleted it. Then I blocked it. Not out of anger. Out of hygiene. I did not want an accidental moment of weakness. I did not want him to be able to reach me when the papers were served. The following Monday, the divorce filing happened. I did not serve June myself. A process server went to her clinic and handed her the documents in the waiting room, between patients, while she was holding a paper cup of coffee and wearing her clinic badge. My phone started ringing 11 minutes later. I let it ring, then texts, then missed calls from my mother, my father, my aunt, my uncle Ashford. Ashford called 9 times in 1 hour. I turned the phone face down on my desk and kept working. By Wednesday I was on a flight to Phoenix. I had 1 suitcase, my laptop, my documents, my tools. I left the furniture. I left the wedding photos. I left the coffee maker we picked out together at Williams-Sonoma because it seemed like the kind of thing adults bought when they were building a light. I left the shelf of plants she had tended for 3 years. I left everything that had her fingerprints on it, which was most of it. I left 1 note on the kitchen counter. It said, "The house goes on the market in 30 days. Figure out your timeline." No signature, no explanation, no invitation to respond. Phoenix was hot in a way that felt almost rude. I arrived in late April and the city was already pushing 100 degrees by noon. I rented a furnished apartment in the Arcadia neighborhood, close enough to the job sites to be practical, far enough from anyone I knew to be honest. I unpacked my suitcase. I sat on the rented couch in a strange apartment and looked at a skyline I did not recognize. I felt nothing. Not freedom. Not sadness. Not the release people describe when they imagine doing something like this. Just absence, the strange, hollow quiet of a room with nothing in it. I went to work the next morning. The Phoenix projects were exactly what I needed. Active, complicated, politically tangled the way urban infill always is. Neighborhood associations with competing interests. City planners with long institutional memories. Contractors who had their own relationships with the subcontractors and did not always appreciate a new senior manager coming in with different standards. I focused completely. 12-hour days. Site walks. In heat that made everything shimmer. Meetings that ran until 7 in the evening. I came home, ate something I had made from whatever was in the refrigerator, and slept. I turned my old phone on once, 3 weeks in, to document something my attorney needed from my message history. 87 missed calls. Over 200 texts. I scrolled through the names without reading the messages. June, my mother, my father, Ashford, my aunt. 3 numbers I didn't recognize that turned out, from context, to be my uncle, my grandmother, and someone June must have asked to reach out on her behalf. I found what my attorney needed and turned the phone back off. A month after I arrived in Phoenix, the house sold. My attorney called. Escrow closes Friday, she said. Net proceeds after payoff and fees are approximately $240,000. Based on the documentation you provided, of the down payment source and your contribution history, your share is well supported. Her attorney is posturing but doesn't have the leverage. Good, Rowan. A pause. You're doing fine. I know this doesn't feel like it yet. I know it doesn't feel like anything, I said. That's different. She was quiet for a moment. Fair enough. The divorce finalized 4 months after I left Portland. June received her personal property, a portion of the joint savings she could document as her contribution, and the contents of her own retirement account. She received nothing from the house proceeds. She received nothing from my business partnership interest. She received nothing that was mine before I met her. Which was more than people expected given how these things usually go. I know this not because I followed her life. I know because my attorney told me what was concluded. And I instructed her to stop updating me after that. Ashford's life I did not track. I did not want to. But my college roommate, who still lived in Portland, and who was a decent person with no stake in any of this, sent me a message about 8 months after I left. He said he thought I should know that Ashford had lost several clients. Word traveled in their professional network, and the story traveled with it. He said Ashford and June were not together. He said Ashford seemed to be doing poorly. He asked if I was okay. I replied that I was, thanked him, and told him I preferred not to receive updates going forward. He respected that. I found out in passing, through my attorney on an unrelated document question, that June and Ashford had not ended up together. Whatever they had was not built for permanence. That did not surprise me. Things built on betrayal rarely are. Phoenix became something I did not expect it to become. Real. I was a stranger there, which turned out to be valuable. Nobody knew the shape of my old life. Nobody looked at me with careful eyes or adjusted what they were about to say. I was just the development manager from out of state who knew what he was doing and didn't talk much about personal things. That suited everyone fine. I made a few genuine friendships. A structural engineer named Beckett. Wait. Not that name. Let me be precise. A structural engineer whose name I will call Tanner in this telling. Because some people in my current life deserve their privacy. He was from Colorado, transplanted to Phoenix for the same reason I was. A project and a clean start. We had lunch together twice a week for 6 months before he knew anything real about my history. And I knew nothing real about his. We talked about work, about desert heat, about the specific misery of site walks in June. That was enough. It was more than enough. About a year into Phoenix, I met someone at a job site. She was an architect. Her name was Sullivan, her last name, which is what everyone on the project called her. So that is what I will use here. She designed the residential component of a mixed-use project I was managing. She had a direct manner and an obvious skepticism of people who talked more than they observed. On our first site walk together, she pointed out a structural issue in the plans that my team had missed. I took note of it without making a moment out of it. "You're not going to argue?" she said. "No," I said. "You're right." She looked at me like that was unexpected. It took us several months to become anything beyond professional. Neither of us rushed it. Neither of us performed. When she asked me once, over dinner, what had brought me to Phoenix, I told her the short version. Wife. Best friend. Family that knew silence. I left. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, "That's a lot of people who chose to protect themselves instead of you." "Yes," I said. "What did you do when you found out they knew?" "Nothing immediately. I built a case first." She nodded. She took a sip of her water. Then she said, "That's the smartest thing you could have done." That was not the beginning. But it was close to it. My old phone sat in a shoebox on the top shelf of my closet. I turned it on every few months briefly, to keep it from being entirely dead. I had some old photos on it I had not transferred. Each time I turned it on, new messages had accumulated. I did not read them. I scrolled the notification count and turned it off. About 18 months after I left Portland, the messages changed in character. I could tell from the previews. They moved from angry to resigned to a new tone I did not have a clean word for. Something between grief and negotiation. My mother wrote things I could see half of in the preview. "I know you don't want to hear from me. I just need you to know that what we did was wrong, and I don't." I turned it off. My father's previews changed too, shorter, more careful. Once, "Rowan, I'm sorry. That's all once. Your cousin is getting married in May. I won't ask you to come. I just wanted you to know." I did not respond to any of it. 20 months after I left, a letter arrived at my work address. My aunt had found it somehow. I did not know how. I had not given it to anyone in my family. I assumed she had contact with someone at my old company. Or, perhaps she had hired someone, or perhaps she had simply been patient and persistent and found a thread to pull. The letter was from my mother. She wrote that my father had been diagnosed with a cardiac issue. Not a heart attack. An arrhythmia that required monitoring and had led to a procedure. She said he was okay but not fully okay. She said he asked about me sometimes, in the way people ask about things they know they cannot reach. She said she was not asking me to come home. She was asking me to know. I read the letter twice. I put it in the drawer of my nightstand. I told Sullivan about it that weekend. We were hiking in South Mountain Park, which is one of those Phoenix things that sounds impossible. Real trails, real elevation, real desert silence, 20 minutes from downtown. She listened while we walked. "Are you going to reach out?" she said. "I don't know." "What would you say if you did?" I thought about that for a while. We had gotten to a ridge with a view of the whole valley, the city spreading out flat and endless in every direction. The mountains in the distance looking painted on. "I don't know that I have anything to say," I said finally. "That's the honest answer." She nodded. She did not tell me what to do. She never told me what to do. That was one of the things that mattered most about her. Another letter came 8 months later, this one from my father. His handwriting was careful, deliberate. The handwriting of someone who had thought a long time about each word. He wrote, "Rowan, I'm not writing to ask for anything. I know I don't have the right. I want to tell you that the decision your mother and I made, to stay quiet, to handle it within the family, to give everyone time, was wrong. I knew it was wrong when we made it. I told myself I was protecting you from something premature. What I was really doing was protecting myself from a hard conversation. I should have called you the day your aunt told us. I should have been your father first, and everyone else's keeper second. I wasn't, and I have thought about it almost every day since you left. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I don't expect that. I'm just asking you to know that you were right to leave. And I was wrong to make you have to. I read the letter on my back patio early in the morning before work. The desert at 6 a.m. is its own kind of quiet. The light comes in low and sideways, and makes everything look briefly kind. My hand shook a little. That surprised me. I thought I had set all of that down. Apparently some of it was still in my hands. Sullivan was inside. She came out with 2 cups of coffee and found me at the table with the letter in front of me. She set the coffee down and sat across from me, without asking what was wrong. My father wrote me, I said. She waited. He apologized. The real kind. The kind where the person takes the whole weight of it, without asking for anything back. She looked at me carefully. What are you going to do? I held the letter for a while. The morning got brighter. A bird I did not know the name of made a sound in the hedge along the back wall. I don't know yet, I said. For 3 weeks I carried the question. I went to work. I walked the sites. I reviewed plans. I came home. I made dinner. I lay awake thinking about a man who was my father sitting at a desk, somewhere in Portland. Writing a letter he did not expect to receive a response to. And I thought about whether the absence of something is the same as a decision. I thought about my grandmother sitting at my Christmas table. My uncle clinking glasses with Ashford at my birthday. My aunt who found out first and told my parents, but did not tell me. All am deciding, each in their own way, that the shape of the family was more important than the truth inside it. I thought about June, who had the whole of our life laid out in front of her, and chose to take a match to it because she was lonely, or bored, or because Ashford was easy and available, and I was gone too many weekends. I thought about Ashford, who ate at my table, held my dog, stood next to me the day I got married, and then spent 6 months looking me in the face and saying nothing. And I thought about my father, writing a letter he knew might disappear into silence, not because he expected an answer, but because he could not leave things unsaid. Late on a Thursday night I sat at my kitchen table and wrote back. 1 paragraph. Not forgiveness, not a door swinging open. Just an acknowledgement. Dad, I got your letter. I'm not ready to talk. I may not be for a long time. But I want you to know I read it and I believe you meant it. That matters to me even if I'm not sure what to do with it yet. I'm alive. I'm okay. That's what I have right now. Rowan. I mailed it the next morning. I did not send my address. I mailed it from a post office on the way to a job site, dropped it in the box, and drove away. I do not know if it reached him before his health declined further. I know he received it because my mother wrote once more, a short note that arrived at my work address. That said only, he read it. Thank you. I filed that note in the drawer with his letter. Then I called my attorney and asked her to notify me only of legal matters going forward. She said she understood. That was 2 years ago now. I am 36. Sullivan and I moved in together 8 months ago. We have a house in Tempe, close enough to the mountains, that on clear days the view from the back porch is the kind of thing that makes you understand why people stayed in the desert. She has a dog, a large, angular animal. With the social confidence of someone who does not believe in strangers, I have learned to love him in the way you love things that are fundamentally undignified about themselves. I still work in development. Different projects now, more sustainable design focus, which is where Sullivan's practice overlaps with mine. Which is how we ended up on the same job sites 3 times in the past year. The city is building things that did not exist before. I help build them. That matters to me in a way it did not when I was younger. The shoebox on the closet shelf sits where it always has. I stopped turning the phone on about a year ago. I transferred the photos I wanted to a new device. The phone itself is just weight now. I keep it the way some people keep an old scar. Not because it is useful, but because throwing it away feels like a decision I do not need to make. I do not know what my mother does on Sunday evenings now. I do not know if Ashford has rebuilt his client base, or if he has moved to a different city, or a different industry. I do not know if June remarried or found her way to something honest, or carries what she did, the way some people carry old debt, present in every new thing she tries to start. I do not look. That is the point. People say it is not healthy to cut everyone off. That healing requires contact reconciliation, some form of closure that 2 sides build together. Maybe that is true for some situations. My situation is not those situations. My situation is 15 people who sat across from me in the last year of my marriage and chose to protect everyone except me. I did not cut them off out of anger. Anger is loud. Anger wakes you up at night and makes you rehearse conversations that will never happen. What I feel is not anger. It is the clean, quiet decision to stop being available to people who only called me when they needed me to forgive them. There is a difference between forgiveness and reconciliation. Forgiveness is something you do inside yourself, so the wound stops affecting everything you touch. I have done that work. Mostly. I do not think about Ashford on a daily basis. I do not feel June's name like a bruise. Reconciliation is different. Reconciliation requires trust. And trust requires a reason to believe the pattern will not repeat. I never found that reason. My parents had 6 months and did not give me the truth. Ashford had 15 years and spent the last stretch of them lying to my face. There is no version of that history that produces a reliable future. So I am here. Sullivan is reading something in the next room. The dog is asleep on the floor in the exact geometric center of the living room. As though he measured it, the mountain range is dark outside the window. And the city lights below the ridge are the way. City lights always look from a distance. Like someone gathered all the evidence that people exist and arranged it. So you could see it all at once. I drink my coffee in the morning on a porch I had a hand in designing. I drive to work through a city I did not grow up in. Which means every part of it belongs to who I am now and none of it belongs to who I was then. Somewhere in Portland, maybe my father's chair at the dinner table sits empty at Christmas. Maybe my mother looks at the door when someone arrives. Maybe Ashford passes a project in the Pearl District and thinks about the Saturday he made a different choice. Maybe June looks at her phone sometimes and starts to type something, and then does not. None of that reaches me. That is what I wanted. Not revenge. Not destruction. Not the satisfaction of watching things fall apart so I could feel vindicated. I wanted to stop being the person in the story that everything happened to. I wanted to write a different story with a different address, a different skyline, a different person. Across the table. Who chose me plainly. And on purpose, every day, without ambiguity. The people who betrayed me wanted closure. A conversation, a confrontation, something they could point to and say the account was settled. I did not give them that. I gave them the door closing quietly and then just nothing, no echo, no response. No confirmation that their attempts at contact had landed. Silence is not punishment when it is also peace. It only becomes punishment if the person receiving it has something to feel guilty about. I sleep well. Sullivan's elbow wakes me up more than my conscience does. That is not a small thing. That is, if I am being honest with you, the whole thing.